Firstly, I would like to say that I have slightly specify the original topic of my presentation, and as a result of that also changed the title to Secrets Hidden on Commercial Signs, a case study of Chinese restaurants fronts in Prague. My talk extends my previous research on naming practices of Chinese restaurants in Prague that was based on a photo documentation collected in August 2020. And one of the results of this research was the finding that the outdoor signage is characterized by language and script plurality. We can observe multilingual combinations of the generic and the specific part of the name. For example, on the first slide, there was the restaurant called Čínská restaurace Tín Manlou. Here, the generic term, the one that refers to a category, to a class of names, is provided in Czech language. It is the Čínská restaurace, meaning Chinese restaurant. And then the specific term is provided in the official romanization system for Chinese, the so-called pinyin. The specific part of the name, the specific term, then identifies the particular feature in question. Apart from this, moreover, a lot of the signs also display Chinese characters, or as I will simply refer to them, sinograms. And I have noticed an extensive use of sinograms on restaurants France, which can be considered an interesting social linguistic phenomenon for at least two reasons. Firstly, Czechia is ethnically and linguistically a very homogeneous country. It is not multicultural and not very cosmopolitan. And secondly, Chinese community in Prague or in Czechia in general is small, geographically dispersed, and not very communal. In relation to Chinese restaurants, this means that they are actually scattered all around the city. It also has to be noticed that Chinese restaurants fronts are not the only venue of sinograms in the public space, but they are the most productive one. And I also dare to say that sinograms are the most common non-Latin script in the Czech public space, which is quite interesting, and I believe it deserves our academic attention. So the goal of my presentation is to describe the status of sinograms on the Chinese restaurant fronts. I will lean on the methodology of linguistic landscape research and also employ their methods, although I have to say that my approach is rather unorthodox because it is, I can say sinogram oriented, and it is limited to only one specific segment of the linguistic landscape. And this segment is located both in central and peripheral urban areas. So it is not focused on a geographically coherent place, displayed on a geographically coherent place. Considering the sphere of activity, restaurant signs are icons of a commercial establishment, which means they are part of a highly competitive environment that is governed by two basic structuration principles. The first of them, presentation of self, refers to the situation that in the commercial spheres, different actors attempt to attract attention of potential clients, and they may hope to achieve this by setting themselves as much as possible in contrast with each other, for example, by using unexpected devices. On the other hand, the good reasons principle refers to the situation that just because the actors are addressing the same people, the same crowd, they also had to do that in respect to certain values, to certain taste to certain fashionable codes. So this is the reason why we can then also observe tendencies for convergence in designing of linguistic landscape items. As for the language choice, the social linguist Polski defines three conditions. The first of them is necessary and applies to all signs that you should use the language that you know. Then the second and the third condition are topicality conditions. They both may apply to a single sign, but one of them may play the bigger importance in the particular situation on the particular sign. Spolsky also pays special attention to advertising signs, and he argues that advertising signs demonstrate the fine interplay between the second condition, the so-called presumed reader's condition, that you should use the language which can be read by the people you expect to read it, and the third condition, the so-called symbolic value condition, that you should use your own language or a language with which you wish to be identified. He also pointed out that the texts that are associated with the symbolic value condition are usually placed on the most prominent part of the sign so that they are not easily overlooked by the crowd. Now, when we now consider the use of signograms on Chinese restaurants fronts in Prague, we can say that these are definitely associated with the symbolic value condition. They are not expected to they are not used to provide the factual information, but they are intended to evoke some connotations. First, I would like to describe the location, the signogram locations. On the picture, you can see, I would say, a prototypical front of a Chinese restaurant that contains the upper wall sign and then the overhanging sign. The upper wall sign has the shape of a horizontal rectangular. It is attached parallel to the wall, and it is located at the upper part of the first floor of the restaurant. Then the overhanging sign projects over the street. Sometimes we can also observe signograms that are written on window signs, and then a special type are signograms that are provided on the entrances that have the shape of a traditional Chinese gate. Apart from this, I would say, big size signs, we can also observe signograms on menus, either displaying the name of the dishes or the restaurant names, and then also on smaller Chinese artifacts like lanterns, statues, and so on. However, in my analysis, I will focus on the big size items, on those that are visible from a street vantage point. As you can see, over 85% of the restaurants display at least one sign with signograms, and it is much more much more common than we can observe at least two signs with signograms. And then we can also observe the already mentioned combination. Most common combination is that of a wall and an overhanging sign. I will now describe these big size signs from the perspective. First of them is information arrangement, and the second of them is the graphic design. As for the information arrangement, we can find four types of information on the signs. It is not surprising that most common of them is the restaurant name, but we can also find the signograms that are provided only as a part of a logo. They are not the restaurant name, they are just part of the logo. Or they can also provide some sort of description considering the type of the restaurant or type of the offered product. And then we can also find some wishes, for example, a desire for prosperity written in signograms. A question now arises: to what extent is the information provided in sinograms transmitted in Czech, or at least in English? I will focus on restaurant names because this is the most progressive group. Restaurant names that are provided in sinograms can either contain only the specific term of the name, or they can be both specific and the generic term. As for the generic term, we can see that most of them are also provided in Czech language, in the local language. However, what is interesting in Czech language, usually these are determined with the attribute čínský, Chinese. So it is not not simply restaurant, but it is specified that it is Chinese restaurant, čínská restaurace. As for the specific term, so this is the identifying part of the name. Most of these names are provided in the official romanization system, the pinyin. Czech and English are given only to a certain measure, and we can also observe that very often the information provided in sinograms and in Czech language is not fully identical. I have here an example of an English restaurant, of a restaurant with an English name, Moon, but in sinograms we have a combination of three sinograms meaning bride, moon, and building. Now I have to say that during the onomastically oriented research, I have found out that name givers use, while naming their restaurants, they use a broad range of Chinese cultural symbols or references to Chinese cultural values. So we can now ask which of them are actually transmitted in the local language as well. These are very limited. The transmitted ideas, it is quite interesting that when the name is translated, it is usually a name that refers to some sort of plant motif, lotus, lily, peony, or cherry, peach, and so on. And on the other hand, we can see that there are quite a lot of semantic concepts that are actually not provided in the local language. They are kept, as I refer to them in the title of my presentation, they are kept as some sort of hidden secrets from the local customers. These include places with a certain ambience, for example, sinograms like garden, building, pavilion, or sinogram referring to home, house, and family. From these, for example, the garden is in China historically multiple functions. It is a place that represents, symbolizes harmony between man and nature. It is a place for contemplation, but it is also a place of social gatherings, family celebrations, theater and music performances, and so on. And then another very favorite practice is that the name giver put his aspirations, expectations, wishes, priorities into the name. For example, by creating the restaurant's image as a place bringing customers pleasure, enjoyment, or happiness, or for example, through the wish for a continuous flow of good fortune or a desire for prosperity. As for the graphic design of the signs, I will start with the location of sinograms on the wall signs. And firstly, they can be a part of a logo, or to be more specific, some of them actually represent the logo themselves, and some of them are just part of the logo. When we look on the horizontal layout, or on the signs with the horizontal layout, we can observe two prominent patterns. First of them is marked as H1, and as you can see, sinograms are located in the middle of the sign, and then the Latin script text is on the left and on the right side. Or there is a variant of this pattern with Latin script text under sinograms, but in these cases, the Latin script text is usually much smaller than the text provided in sinograms. And as for the second pattern marked as H2, here we can also observe two variants. And in case of one of them, sinograms are again they take the bigger part of the sign than the text in Latin alphabet. As for the vertical layout, here we can also observe one pattern, most prominent pattern, in which the specific, the generic term in Chinese, in Czech or in English is in the upper part of the sign, and then the sinograms and specific part of the name are in the lower part of the sign. As for the vertical writing, which is quite popular in Chinese writing system, we can observe this type of writing on overhanging signs and then on window signs. As for the color choices, it is interesting that the sinograms are usually provided in yellow or a color there that is somewhere near to orange, but the basic color is the yellow one, or in white or in red. And these three colors also represent the most common combinations as far as it concerns the colors used on the sign in general. Usually the background is red and then the text is provided in yellow and in white. And as for the styles of Chinese writing, I mean the styles of Chinese calligraphy, in Chinese calligraphy, almost 60% of the signs are provided in the semi-cursive script, which is more decorative. In this script, the strokes are more connected together than, for example, in the regular script. And because of this, these texts are also more hard to read than the texts that are provided in the regular script. So to conclude, I would like to assign the observed characteristics to the defined principles and conditions. As for the presentation of self, we can say that sinograms are a very effective signal that attracts attention and at first glance sets the restaurants in contrast with the surrounding establishments. As for the good reasons, these are the tendencies for convergence, for repeatedly using some types of presentation. Here we can assign the popularity of sinograms itself, that because we have observed it at least 85% of the signs. Then also the occurrence of sinograms on multiple signs. Then also occurrence of sinograms in specific parts of the layout patterns. And then also the use of colors. I forgot to mention that the yellow and red are considered to be the positive, or are the colors with positive connotations in Chinese culture. And then as for the symbolic value condition, here we can definitely assign the limited transmission of information. We have also observed that sinograms were placed on the often easily visible and eye-catching places of the signs. Also, the decorative style of writing that is hard to read, so it's not intended to be read. And then again, also the colors that we associate with Chinese culture, again, red and yellow. So to sum up, I have identified a set of aspects how sinograms contribute to shaping the situation. I have to highlight the word contribute, because as you might have noticed, they are actually only part of the signature that this restaurant specializes in ethnic Chinese food, because there can be seen much more devices, much more tools, linguistic and non-linguistic, that are providing the same information. And as a follow-up research, I think it will be nice to analyze the semiotic configuration of all of these items that are provided with Chinese restaurant France. Yeah, thank you very much. This will be all.
Thank you. Yes, we have a question.
Hi, I'm Rachel Garten. Very good presentation. Thank you. Almost all my questions you ended up answering on another slide, so it was very well done. I did notice on slide, I think it was slide 16, I noticed one of the characters was upside down.
That was the character for happiness, and this is like, it is also the symbol of the happiness itself. And usually when you want to wish it, you have to put it upside down.
Oh,
that is, this is a part of the symbolic.
Interesting, thank you.
Thank you. I was wondering about, with reference to the fu upside down, and when you have words like descriptive words like 明月, which aren't translated into Czech or English, is that some sort of, that it's not self-projection? So who's the audience for those kind of choices like lucky? Presumably the restaurant owner specified that, you know, it chose a name that has positive connotations, like 明月 is beautiful, is a beautiful idea. But if it's not projected to people walking down the street, who is the audience for those kind of things?
I would say that the audience is definitely not the local people here, because it is not it is not transmitted in a way that the people can understand it. So the audience, I would say, are the owners of the restaurant themselves, because they wish, this is their wishes for the restaurant, and they somehow don't want to transmit, or it's not don't want, but maybe don't pay attention to that, so that they transmit their wishes also, so that they will be visible for the audience, for the customers. Maybe they don't notice that, but I don't know.
If I can just do a follow-up on that question and comment, have you considered whether, I mean, it seems that the what you're talking about is actually signification that signifies different things to different audiences. So if people who know Chinese can really make sense of these signs, what it signifies to Czech people? I mean, by these signs, do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that the information is very simple. It signifies that this is the Chinese restaurant, and that's it. That's why I call the presentation Hidden Secrets, because it's really hidden from the local customers. And from my perspective as a sinologist, I think that it is a pity, because they, in a one way, the restaurant owners chose a way that is provided with so many informations, but on the other way, they don't transmit the information to the local customer.
Yes, it's Gordon Berthen. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I'm wondering if you've considered the semiotic possibilities of the Chinese characters as viewed by the Czech audience. For example, if, say, one of the characters had the characteristic house shape, which would look to a Czechoslovakian person presumably like a house, and then the other one had the three plates, which I think means buffet or something in Chinese, then a Czechoslovakian person would read it as a buffet house, irregardless, I guess, of what the Chinese name was. I'm not even sure if it would necessarily be correct, but I would think that would be something that might attract the Czechoslovakian customer, as well as the native Chinese, who would simply read it for whatever the Chinese equivalent was. Do you think that any of that might go into
thank you very much. This is a nice thought. I don't believe that they that the Chinese choose the characters with respect to this, like to choose the character that might be easily to recognized by the Czech consumers, so that there will be something that they catch. Okay, this is a house or something like that. I simply believe they just really chose the characters that have the connotations that they wish there to be. But it is a nice thought, and I should think about it if maybe there is something like that in this. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Chinese, so I just would like to explain something about the character upside down. In fact, the character happiness upside down, that's what we attached it to the door when there's in the spring, and that means upside down. That means in Chinese also it arrives, 到了. So we can say the happiness is upside down. It's as to say the happiness arrived. So that's the explanation.
Yeah, for the character.
I have a short question. So you took 120 restaurants in Prague. If we take 120 restaurants in China in a town of similar size, would the names of the restaurants overlap, or will they be completely different?
I didn't go so far, but I believe there will be, like, for example, the name practices that were observed in Czech Republic are also typical for name practices in China. This I know because I have compared it with the research done in China. So I believe we can find similarities all around the world. Yeah.
And Tian did a remark. It would be interesting also to gather, collect information on the nationality of the owner of the restaurant, because many restaurants are owned by Vietnamese who may have different cultural references.
Yeah, but definitely. But now in Czech Republic, I think that they are doing. They would like to distinguish themselves. So if it is Vietnamese restaurant, there will be written Vietnamese restaurant, because the generic part of the name, in most of the cases, included the word Chinese restaurant. So I believe the owners were also Chinese. But that also is also one perspective that I should dig in more deeper. But as the tendency is like to distinguish it with the word Vietnamese or Chinese, if it is Chinese or Vietnamese.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.